Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our webinar. I'm Michael Boulanger, CEO of the company RMB, and I will be pleased to co-present this webinar with Arthur and Emily. Our mission today will be to inform you about the new e-commerce VAT rules that should apply on B2C sales from the 1st of July in the EU. For your guidance, this topic is still very new, and we would like you to bear in mind that lots of practical details or information still need to be provided or clarified by the European Commission. Just before the Q&A session, we will have a 3-question poll so that we can know more about your activities and your interest in having a follow-up call with RMB. We will also be happy to share this presentation with you, and we will email it to you. I would like to give you a few words before we start to talk to you about this new topic, to give you a few words about our company. So here are the 3 speakers. And I just wanted to give you a few words about our company. So our company is employing around 30 people. We were founded in 1981, so we've been providing VAT services for about 40 years now. And our company provides tax representation and VAT services in the EU. And we namely provide VAT audits, analysis of the compliance of contractual and administrative documents. We take care of VAT refund applications. We also deal with intrastate declarations and eco-contributions namely in France and in the EU. Arthur, would you like to give you a few words about
Yes.
the significant figures about the e-commerce in the world?
Yes. Thank you, Michael. Hi, everybody. Some of you may know me already. My name is Arthur. And just to give you some figures, which are actually astonishing. Personally, I cannot just imagine these kind of numbers. But just to show you how important the e-commerce world is today and how much it represents from the global economy. So here are a couple of figures, and maybe an important remark is that, as you can see, 1 trillion out of 4 is cross-border trade. So that's really 1/4 of the business, which is huge. And the number of people shopped online in 2017, as you can figure out, in 2021, this number is much higher. So just to give you a first introduction of how important the upcoming changes are and how they concern lots and lots of people, industries all over the world. Just let's start defining what is exactly distance selling. We are talking about B2C sales, so sales to private individuals residing in the EU. Obviously, we are talking about the EU here, and we are talking about more than just internet sales. This can be also catalog sales, telephone sales, email sales, and for what concerns the definition, it doesn't really matter whether there is an intervention of a marketplace or not. They are all considered as distance selling. Next slide. I think maybe a first thing to underline and to stress how important this slide is, as we must define 3 basically scenarios where we are talking about B2C sales, intra-EU sales, with or without the market platform. We have 3 types of sales. We have the domestic sales, meaning that the sale is happening in a certain country, the goods are already in that country when the sale is happening. So basically, for example, of France, you have a stock in France, you are selling to French private individuals. This is a domestic distance selling. There is use of an internet platform or whatsoever, but we remain in France at all time of the selling process. The second situation is when we are talking about an intra-community distance selling, where there is one EU country as a point of departure. The goods on the moment of sale are already in the EU, and they are border crossing basically to another EU country to that private individual. So very important to keep in mind that this is within the European Union. There is no import or whatsoever that comes in this process. And the third type is when goods are at the moment of the sale outside of the EU, for example, in a warehouse in the US or in Canada or in another non-European country, and they are imported only when the sale has been completed on the website, and then the goods are imported to the European Union and sold directly to the private individual. Very important to make this difference and to keep that in mind for the rest of the presentation. So we are talking here also about the pitfalls of the old system. Many of you are familiar with these couple of blocks, but I guess there is a lot more to tell about. We are talking about nowadays about managing the threshold per country to determine the VAT obligations. On top of that, every country has its own interpretation, whether what flows are taken into account to manage this threshold, etc., etc. So it's an everlasting question for the last years that we have been struggling with. We also have then the VAT registration obligations in several countries once you pass this threshold. I guess a lot of you are familiar with that and the pain that comes with it. The payment of VAT then obviously after being registered in those different countries, making sure that you understand all the obligations, the local obligations, local interpretations. We also have the aspect of the low value goods, which are nowadays exempted of VAT and customs duties when we are beneath the value of the 22 euros. So this, of course, creates extra competition between the sellers and obviously also the perverse effect of fraud, whether that would be conscious or not by certain sellers, conscious or not, choosing not to register it in certain countries or whatsoever, which creates again a gap between the different sellers. Now, with that being said, what are then the reasons of making these reforms from the point of view of the European Union? Now, first of all, in continuation of the last slide, is to fight the fraud, obviously, because as you can see, a couple of numbers, 5 and 7 billion euros a year that are missed by the European Union because of it. We also, of course, know all the bigger companies are basically doing their best to be compliant, but what to do with all these little sellers? Obviously, maybe because they don't know what to do, maybe because they don't want it, maybe because they are just too small to afford themselves to register in different countries, and so on and so on. Obviously, there is also an advantage for you as distant sellers, as companies, to simplify the declaration so that you don't have to be registered in 27 different countries in the European Union potentially. These VAT rules actually date from quite a time ago when I was just a kid back then. But so this is the first really major change since then. And obviously reducing the number of VAT declaring parties, and this is when it came in to make the platforms liable for VAT instead of sellers, so that you would actually merge a large number of sellers to the obligation of the platform. So just to give you a background of that, and what is exactly now changing. Now, first of all, VAT is due from this moment onwards to all imported goods. Doesn't matter actually the value. Now, let's split the duties and the VAT. The duties rules for low value goods still remain, so they're still exempted under the 22 euros. But the VAT has to be paid on all goods. No, doesn't matter really the value. And these kind of signals we already received in the past, because some countries already implemented these kind of rules, such as Norway, a couple of years ago, if I'm not mistaken. So um, that's then also to make sure that the union makes more money out of the economic transactions. Secondly, the threshold is changing. We don't have any thresholds anymore per country as we know it, 35,000 euros, 100,000 euros, etc. From July onward, we will have one threshold, which is 10,000 euros for all sales in the European Union. So even if you do in 10 countries 1,000 euros of sales, together that makes 10,000 euros, and you pass the threshold, you are eligible to collect VAT for all those different countries through the new system. Now, this new system, and let me underline that, is still optional. This is not an obligation to join the new system. Your company can very easily choose for whatsoever reason. And one of the reasons could, for example, be that you also have B2B operations in certain countries, and so you need your VAT number anyway. So a company can still choose whether they will be using the simplification and the one-stop shops or not. And obviously digital platforms that will be responsible for the VAT on e-sales. Again, this is to reduce the number of paying parties and collecting parties, and to make sure that VAT is collected anytime to any sale that goes through a platform. Now, from a customs point of view, there are also a couple of remarks to be made. We have to keep in mind that from now on, when we will use the new system, we will have one customs declaration per import, obviously. We will also have specific custom declarations for low value shipments. So again, this 22 euro rule for customs purposes remains intact. And we have the complex interactions with the EOSS portal. More about that by Michael later on this presentation. And the deadline, the 1st of July, everybody had their doubts whether the countries would be ready or not. It seems to be so. Again, more about that later, but you know, as in a nutshell already, a summarize of the changes. So maybe start with, we have 3 examples prepared for this webinar. I'll start with the first one. The other 2 will be highlighted by Michael. So the first one is the intra-EU distance selling. Remember from our beginning overview, these are the sales that of goods that are already in the European Union when the sale is made, and so are sent cross-border to another EU member state. Let's take an example and compare basically the 2 situations before and after the 1st of July. So what we know now is, for example, in our example, we have a warehouse in France. We have, first of all, local sales in France. We have then also multiple sales to multiple countries within the European Union. By the old system, we would have the threshold per country, and we would say, for example, the first one, in Germany, we have a turnover today of 80,000 euros. The threshold is 100,000 euros. The goods are going from France to Germany, and so we continue to invoice French VAT as long as the threshold has not been obtained. In the second example, we have a turnover of 45,000 euros from France to Belgium, to Belgian private individuals. Let me stress that. The threshold is 35,000, which is the majority of the European countries that have this threshold, more or less. And in that case, we will start to invoice Belgian VAT. We will be obligated to register for Belgian VAT and to declare and file Belgian VAT declarations and pay the VAT to Belgian tax authorities. And in the third example, again, we have a 35,000 euro threshold to Italy. The threshold is not met. We are continuing to invoice French VAT to Italian private individuals as long as the threshold is not met. Now, in the new system, first of all, the most important thing to highlight here is that local sales remain local. They are outside of the OSS simplification rules, so they must be further declared and paid with French VAT declarations and so on. So on that sense, nothing really changes. These are local sales, and it doesn't matter whether you have a physical store as if in France or you would have a website sale. Now, for the other examples, as you can see, well, we have we took the same turnover, but this turnover does not matter anymore because the sum of all these turnovers in all these countries is obviously more than 10,000 euros. And so we will apply the VAT of the country of destination, even though the goods are going from France. Now, what does it mean? It means that we will apply automatically the VAT of the country of destination. You will put the price on your invoice, which is all included, all taxes included and everything included. But the VAT will be filed through the French, in this case, OSS portal, and the French tax authorities will then forward the money to the relevant tax authorities. I hope this is already a first clear introduction to the changes from a practical sense. And so who is to benefit from this simplification rules, from these new rules from the 1st of July? The OSS desk is open to all companies, whether you are established in the EU or not. It doesn't really matter. But also to market platforms. These market platforms, as they will have the obligation, Michael will tell you about this later on the webinar, to also collect VAT and to file and to pay to the tax authorities. They will be able to use the OSS platform as well to simplify their lives as well. Remember, this is optional use. You are not obligated, and in order to use it, you will be needing, we will need to have a number first. This is not a VAT number, it is another number. And for example, in France, they have opened applications since the end of April, so a couple of weeks ago. There is also a possibility to appointing a proxy for the OSSS, which can be us, for example, and we can help you manage all these operations through the platform. Next slide. And well, I guess you can guess already what the benefits are, but here is an overview again. You only need one registration. So in our previous example, it would be a registration in France. You will be declaring intra-community distance sales, B2B, B2C services also, and e-services sold in all EU countries. Remember, I'm not sure if you know, but there was already a platform in place, a kind of a test platform, which was called the MOS. So basically, it is the continuation of that. We have a single payment of VAT due in all countries of the European Union, and then the tax authorities where you are subscribed will then forward the payment to the relevant tax authorities and their colleagues. And we have exemption rules for invoicing. And so in a recap again, I hope this makes sense to you all. French warehouse, goods are going from France to other countries. One threshold, 10,000 euros for all the sales together. We declare that in this one platform. The VAT is paid in that one platform to the tax administration of your country. In this example, would be France, and France is then forwarding all the money to the relevant tax authorities. Maybe a last remark or an interesting thing to know is that these declarations from the OSS platform will be quarterly. This is a quarterly declaration and a quarterly payment. Important because other platforms will be monthly, but more about that later. So the OSS intra-community sales are quarterly filing and payment. You have to pay attention to the different VAT rates because they're still there. Belgium is 21%, Germany is 19, etc., etc. So make sure that you have this conversation internally in your company, because it means that you will be, if you will be selling on a unified price, so the same price for all countries within the European Union, it would mean that your profit, for example, in Germany would be slightly higher than in Belgium because the VAT rates are different. So whether or not you would then adjust your prices per country or not is something to discuss internally within your company. And beware of the domestic sales, as highlighted already in my example. They are not to be declared in the OSS, and you will still be having a VAT number in that case, for example, in France. And with that, I believe my part is over, but I will still remain with you guys, of course. I'm still here. Michael, I hope I did well, but I'm sure you will do much better. I give
No,
you the stage. Break a leg.
thank you very much, Arthur. Your explanations were very clear. Just a last comment on what you've just said about the intra-community supplies of goods. Obviously, we believe that you will be happy to use the OSSS platform because it will allow you to have one single VAT registration in the EU. However, pay attention that we are only talking about direct transactions with direct transport. It means that in case your companies would have multiple stocks of goods in the EU, then it would need your company to report some intra-community transfers of own goods from a country to another. So it means that your company would still need to register for VAT in some countries where the goods would be stored. But I think, Arthur, you did very well. Thank you very much for this. And let's move on to the next part of our presentation. And the next part of this presentation is the distance selling of imported goods. Well, you will see that, as usual, the European Commission wanted to simplify the process, and my mission would be to try to be as clear as possible with these new regulations. But you will see that, the simplification is not really there. Well, in our views, actually. The old VAT regime for distant sales of imported goods, we call it old, even if it's still applicable until the 1st of July. Normally, it seems that this reform will enter into force by the 1st of July, but it's still always possible to have some surprises. But the system as it is today consists in having a VAT exemption for low value parcels, values under 22 euros. It means that there's no VAT to be paid on these low value consignments. And the VAT, the import VAT, is paid by the person which is designated as the recipient of the goods on the import declarations. And that creates a lot of problems because you may know that some private consumers have to pay the import VAT and the customs duties to the express couriers, and they are not very happy about this. And that's happening if no arrangements are made by the seller. The private individuals is held responsible for the payment of the import VAT and the customs duties. So it has created some bad surprises for some private individuals, and the arrangement are that the sellers register for VAT somewhere in the EU or in the country of import, and the seller would charge, would take care of the import VAT and would charge the relevant VAT in the country of destination. The system, as it will be from the 1st of July, will be that there will be no exemption, no VAT exemption for low value goods. VAT will be due on all goods from the first euro. It means that some sellers that had the temptation to lie on the value of their goods, well, will not be possible anymore because the goods will need to be taxed for VAT purposes from the first euro. And there will be a possibility for the sellers to use the so-called IOSS, Import One-Stop Shop. And this system will only apply for goods that will be less than 150 euros, but I will tell you more about this in a few minutes. So there will be an introduction of a new VAT regimes on sales. It means that you can forget everything from about the current regulations, because the VAT will be due at the final place of consumption of the goods, and there will be a possibility to declare this VAT on sales through the IOSSS for parcels that are less than 150 euros. So this portal will be open to companies that are established in the EU and that would be importing goods from non-EU countries. This system would also be available to companies based outside the EU. For example, a US-based company that would sell goods directly to private individuals in the EU. We would be talking about distance selling of imported goods. But this portal will also be available to the marketplaces. And as Arthur has already told you about this, marketplaces will be responsible for the payments of the VAT in certain and very specific cases, and therefore they will be allowed to use the IOSS system so that their import VAT and the VAT on sales can be reported directly through one single web portal. The use of the IOSSS is optional, even if it will be highly recommended, because in case companies would not use it, then they would need to register for VAT in the countries of destination, and there will be an obligation to appoint an intermediary for the non-EU companies having goods imported directly into the EU. It will be a kind of fiscal representative, and we just for your guidance, we have applied to the French tax authorities to be allowed to have the accreditation to act as an intermediary for our clients based outside the EU. So what are the benefits of the IOSSS? The first benefit is that there will be one single registration to be applied, and it will allow the seller to declare their VAT on sales directly through this web portal, provided that the goods are less than 150 euros. So the IOSSS will not be workable for goods whose values would be more than 150 euros. There will be one single payment of VAT on sales in all EU countries through the IOSSS, and there will also be an exemption from invoicing. That means that the sellers will not have any obligation anymore to issue sales invoices, provided that the IOSSS will be used. Obviously, there will be no hidden costs for the customers, no bad surprises for the customers, because they will know at the time they will be ordering their products how much the products will cost them, and they will include everything. And there will be an exemption from the import VAT, again, for goods whose values will be less than 150 euros. There will be no VAT on import. There will be only VAT on sales. If you're familiar with the UK system, which has entered into place from Brexit, since Brexit happened, the system is basically the same. There is an import VAT exemption for goods that are less than 135 pounds, and that's exactly the same system that will be applicable in the EU from the 1st of July. So how the IOSSS will work practically speaking. Let's take an example of a non-EU company that would be selling goods of less than 150 euros to clients based or domiciled in Germany, in Belgium, and in Italy. This company, in our example, has decided to register for the IOSSS in France. They would then need to appoint an intermediary in France. And the VAT on sales will be reported and paid directly to the French tax authorities, even if this VAT will be due to in Germany, in Belgium, and in Italy. So the mission of the French tax authorities will be to collect all this VAT and to redispatch these amounts of VAT to the relevant tax authorities. That will be how the system will be working from the 1st of July. There will be one single declaration, and this declaration will need to be made on a monthly basis. As Arthur said it, about the OSS system, with the OSS system for the direct intra-community system, for the distance selling, there will be a quarterly declaration. So here with the IOSSS, the filing will be on a monthly basis. Pay attention that the right VAT rates will need to be applied, the right German, Belgian, and Italian VAT rate. But the good thing is that this non-EU company will only have one single tax authorities to deal with and one single VAT payment to made using an intermediary. So we took a very practical example. This will be our case study 1, and we will be talking about Katarina. Katarina is a Spanish customer. She decided to buy a pair of shoes, and the pair of shoes values is 110 euros. The shoes will be bought from Harrods in the UK, and the parcel will be shipped directly from the UK to Spain. The shoes will come through the French border, and Harrods, as a seller, has decided to use the IOSS system. That means that Harrods, because the goods are less than 150 euros, if they're using the IOSS system, they will benefit from the exemption of the import VAT. They won't have to pay it, and they will report to the French tax authority through their intermediary. They will need to pay this VAT and at Spanish VAT rate. And the mission of the French tax authorities will be to pay the Spanish tax authorities with this VAT. In case Harrods decided not to use the IOSS system, then it would make the story a little bit more complicated, because the VAT will still be due in Spain, which is the country of consumption of the goods, and the company will need to register for VAT directly in Spain. So Harrods would be probably more than willing to register for the IOSS system, so that there would be no VAT on import, and there would just be one single country of filing for the VAT on sales in this particular case. Before the 1st of July, so for the next weeks, Katarina would still need to pay the import VAT and the customs duties, but this will be solved if Harrods decides to use the IOSS system. And pay attention that even when the IOSS system will be into force, the VAT will still be due in the country of destination. That will be very important, and especially from a customs perspective, because in case goods would be cleared in Spain, then the customs the customs broker would have the obligation to file a T1 document so that the goods can be shipped, can be moved from France to Spain, and the goods will be physically imported into Spain, and import VAT would be due in Spain. So we've told you a lot about the 150 euro value, and we believed it would be a good thing to tell you more about what is the intrinsic value of the contents of a package. So the 150 euros are calculated no matter how many items are in one package. It can be different items, provided that their values do not exceed 150 euros. The 150 euros applies on the value of the goods, on an intrinsic value. That means that we highly recommend the sellers to clearly mention the price of the products independently from the transport costs. Because in case they would just be mentioned a full value, including the value of the goods as well as the transport cost, in our example in red, and let's imagine that the value of the goods would be 150 euros and the transport cost would be 15 euros. Then if no details are mentioned on the documents, then it would make the prices more than 150 euros and the IOSS system would not be available. So it is very important that the sellers clearly mention the intrinsic value of their goods on their documents so that the customs broker knows that the IOSS becomes possible. So we've told you about the intra-EU distance selling. We've told you about the distance selling of imported goods. And now we will inform you about the regulations that will apply on sales via the electronic platform. As Arthur has already mentioned it, the marketplaces will become responsible for the payment of the VAT in two very specific cases, and we will go through these cases. The ambition of the European Commission was definitely to reduce the number of taxpayers and to make the marketplaces responsible for the payment of the VAT in the names of their clients, in their place. And that comes from a huge VAT fraud that's been happening in the EU for years and years and years. And some studies shows that around 98% of the non-EU sellers working through marketplaces are not registered for VAT anywhere in the EU, 98%. So that makes a huge VAT fraud. And one of the purposes of this reform is definitely to make the marketplaces responsible for the VAT in the name of their clients. So how will it work? As we've informed you about this, the OSSS will be available for the marketplaces as well. It means that in case some marketplaces would be used by non-EU sellers. Let's take a very simple example. Let's imagine that a Chinese company would decide to sell goods through a marketplace in the EU. Then the OSSS, provided that the goods would be shipped from the EU, and that's our example, goods would be stored in France and shipped from France to the various EU countries, then the marketplace will be responsible for paying the French VAT on the French sales, but also to pay the VAT in Germany, in Spain, and in Italy through the OSSS that they would require. And that means that the marketplaces will have their own OSSS registration number, and they would file the VAT that would need to be paid to France, Germany, Spain, and Italy through one unique OSSS registration, probably where the marketplaces are established. So in this particular case, goods are sold from the EU, the point of departure of the goods, and the goods are sold from a French warehouse. But the particular thing here is that sellers are non-EU, they are based outside the EU. And if these non-EU sellers are using a marketplace, then the marketplace will have the obligation to be responsible for paying the VAT on behalf of their clients. There will also be another obligation for marketplaces to pay the VAT on behalf of their clients. And this will happen in case goods are imported from non-EU countries, and if the parcels have a value less than 150 euros. So in our example here, the point of departure of the goods are outside the EU, goods are less than 150 euros. The sellers are using a marketplace. The goods in our example are customs cleared in France. That means that in this particular case, the marketplace will be responsible for using its own IOSS registration, and this marketplace will need to file and pay the VAT on sales to their clients. So it may seem a bit weird because the relationship is obviously the same between the seller and their clients. However, from a VAT perspective, the VAT will be charged and collected and repaid to the French tax authorities by the marketplace, and the sales between the sellers and the marketplace will become a B2B sale without VAT. And that's probably the most, the trickiest point of this reform. When marketplaces are responsible for paying the VAT, the relationships from a VAT perspective with their sellers, with the sellers, become B2B transactions. And we are expecting many issues about this, as this will imply that everybody involved in the supply chain or in the chain, generally speaking, will need to know the obligation of each other in the chain. But I will come back on this a little bit later. So the key questions are to know whether a marketplace or a marketplace platform is responsible for VAT in place of the seller can be recapped in this small drawing. The definition of the marketplace is to facilitate the sale of goods via an online marketplace platform. That means that not all electronic platforms will be responsible for paying VAT, but many of them will be responsible. And the question will be to know whether what platforms will be responsible for paying the VAT or not. So the first question is actually to know whether the goods are sold by a seller that would be established or not in the EU. If the seller is established in the EU, no worries, the marketplace will not be responsible for paying the VAT. However, if the seller is based in China, in the US, or anywhere else outside the EU, selling through a platform, and if the point of departure is in the EU, then there is absolutely no other way than for the marketplace to be responsible for collecting and paying the VAT. The other case is about the value of the goods in case goods are imported from a non-EU country. And in this particular case, the marketplace will only be responsible for goods who will be less than 150 euros. And the marketplace in this particular case will be responsible for collecting and paying the VAT. Here are some examples of electronic platforms that may be affected. Obviously, we we think a lot about Amazon, eBay, Cdiscount, and many other marketplaces, but some other platforms could be affected as well, namely some online advertising platform, social media, some software application platforms. And to be fully frank with you, this is not made very clear so far by the EU Commission. We are still waiting for some further clarifications on this to know what platforms will be responsible for paying the VAT or not. What says the Commission about this is that the platforms that will be responsible for paying the VAT are only platforms that facilitate sales. And a platform or marketplace will be deemed to facilitate sales if it brings together via an electronic interface a customer and a seller that will lead to a delivery of goods via the interface. So with this definition, we could understand that almost all marketplaces would be, or market platforms would be affected by these changes, but there are some exclusions that are foreseen by the European Commission. And those who are not considered as facilitators or platforms providing only payment, promotion, advertising sites, or that sites that would only redirect clients to the sales platform. In these cases, the market platforms would not be considered as the taxpayers for the VAT on sales. There are also three cumulative requirements that will make the platforms not responsible for the VAT. It would be in case the platform will not be established, they would not establish any GTCs, they would not be involved in the payment. GTC stands for General Terms and Conditions. And in case the platform will not be involved in the order or in the delivery. If these three cumulative requirements are met, then the platform will not be deemed facilitating the sale. So they will not be responsible for the VAT. As mentioned, we believe that these criteria are not precise, accurate enough, and we would be very happy if the European Commission could provide us with some more explanations on this. We have a second case, and the second case is always about Katarina. She still lives in Spain. She still likes buying shoes from Harrods. Her shoes are still less than 110 euros, but different here is that Katarina is buying her shoes from Harrods, but through a marketplace. And Harrods decided to use this marketplace in order to have the sale facilitated, and the platform would, in this particular case, be responsible for paying the import VAT, or at least to register for the IOSS so that they could avoid paying the import VAT. However, through their IOSS registration, the marketplace will report and pay the Spanish VAT at the Spanish VAT rate to the French tax authorities. That's how the system will be in this particular case. So there are some key points to keep in mind because we're expecting some potential difficulties. The first difficulty is about, well, what VAT should I charge on my B2C sales? Am I using, in most cases, there will be the VAT of the country of destination, but there could be some other situations, namely in case I would be an non-EU seller selling to a platform, for example, and of imported goods, and I would need to report a B2B sale. So this first question is very important. What would be the VAT rate would be the second question, but that's not a big surprise for you. Who will be liable for the payment of VAT? Will it be the seller or the marketplace? will the OSSS or the IOSSS be available in my situation? It would be a very important question. And in what countries will I still be required to identify for VAT purposes? And I mentioned the possibility of having different stocks located in different EU countries. This would trigger a VAT registration in some EU countries. The second thing is to have a very good communication with the marketplace, because obviously they will need to know, and you will need to know, who will be responsible for paying VAT, because we're expecting some operators to have double payments of VAT. Could be the sellers not understanding well the regulations and the marketplace paying twice this VAT. That will probably happen in case the operators are not pretty sure about their missions in this new system. And the third thing would be to have very, very accurate communications with the customers' representatives, because obviously they will need to know about the value of your goods, and they will need to know whether you as a seller or you as a marketplace have an IOSS number, because this IOSS number will need to be reported in the import customs declaration. So there are some other potential difficulties, namely the reluctance of the e-platforms to be liable for VAT. We've talked to a number of them, and they are pretty scared about their future responsibility in terms of VAT, because they will need to rely on the understanding of this new system from each operator, so that they can be sure that they really need to pay the VAT, or and that will probably be some discussions to have with some e-platforms, and some of them have already instructed their clients that they will not be accepting to be responsible for the payment of VAT, and they have required a client to set up a permanent establishment in the EU, so that VAT situation would be easier to handle for them, because they would not be responsible. And there may be some reluctance from the customs representatives, because they could be acting as indirect representatives, namely in case they would file customs declarations in the name of some non-EU companies, and they would bear a huge responsibility in terms of customs. They would need to know whether the USSS has been chosen or not, and the consistency of the paperwork, of the documents, would be the key to success, actually. So what could be the best solution, or a possible solution, for non-EU sellers? That's our views, but we believe that this system, the OSSS, IOSSS system, will probably create a lot of burden, a lot of difficulties for the marketplaces, but also for the sellers, because as you've seen it's been an hour, almost an hour, we've been talking about this. These implications are not that simple. And we believe that a possible solution could consist in having a stock, a unique stock in the EU, and not using the direct import system through the IOSSS system, because we believe that the customs brokers will not be very happy to use it. The marketplaces will not be very happy to have all the responsibility, and having one unique stock in one single EU country could make EU sellers in a position to avoid having the direct import of goods, and they could use the OSS system, which makes the situation much simpler for the sellers. These are our views, but we've heard from certain marketplaces requiring their clients to have a stock of goods in the EU, so that nobody will be responsible for the imports of goods. Not nobody actually, but not the marketplaces or the customs representative. Well, this was the last slide of the presentation. I'm fully aware that we gave you a lot of information today. I hope that uh, this brought some clarity in your mind. To be fully frank with you, it took weeks for ourselves to fully understand these new regulations because they are more than complicated. And if okay with you, we will be very happy to have a very short a 3-question poll, and I will ask if Arthur would be so kind to run it from me, or maybe I can do it myself. Do you hear me, Arthur? So here are some very simple questions. The first question, if you would be so kind to answer this question, would be, we would be interested to know what is your level of knowledge concerning these new regulations. Is your knowledge low, as an average, or expert? We'd like to know also if you have, if you would be happy to have some calls, dedicated calls with our teams on this particular topic. I would be very happy to have this call with you because we believe that it would be very happy to deeply analyze the mapping of your goods. And we would like to know if your company believes that they will be concerned by the OSSS, by the IOSSS, or by both. So Arthur, as you can see, I think that the votes are closed now. As you can see, there are still some people voting. Well, maybe we can add 30 more seconds on this.
Oh, leave it like that. Maybe, Michael, people can vote.
Yeah.
Maybe in the meanwhile, guys, there were some questions in the Q&A. Thank you for that, for your activity. It's always good to think about this topic together with you guys. I suggest that we have a couple of minutes left, so please go ahead and ask your questions in the Q&A. I will also make a recap of the most questions already asked by our fellow participants, and I will send it to you in a way of information as well, together with our presentation to you guys later on today, so that you can read through that and maybe come back to us on a one-on-one call or whatsoever. So please feel free to ask your questions, whether that would be now. I'll leave it open for a couple of minutes. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. And I hope we will be seeing you back on our next webinar, as we
So,
like to do webinars.
Satya, the results of these questions are very interesting because 61% of the attendees know the basic principle. Um, so it's an average level of knowledge, which is very good, by the way, because an average is already very good. Some are believe that they are experts, which is even greater. But some of them have a very low level of knowledge, and I would suggest to have maybe some follow-up calls with with everybody, by the way, but particularly with the people that believe that they have a low knowledge on this topic. Another interesting result is that 68% of our attendees believe that they will be concerned by the OSS and the IOSS system. It means that many of our attendees will have to deal with the distance selling of imported goods, and they probably understood that this is probably the most difficult part, the most complex part. And again, we will be happy to help you with this. Any other comment, Arthur?
Well, I have also received a question from was it Olivier, I think, and yes, we will be sending the presentation, which is recorded, to all the attendees. Please feel free to share it. So yes, you will also receive a webcast of the presentation, so that you can we go through it in live and watch, obviously, our beautiful faces with that. presentation. I think there is a lot of questions, mostly also about how do we invoice, which VAT rate do we use. Michael, I don't know if you want to pick up on that again.
Well, I think it will be time to close our webinar, and it is 11:30 sharp. So we're on time. Thank you very much for attending this webinar. We were very happy to have you with us today, even if this topic is, well, uh, complex, complicated. What other words could I choose to tell you about? This has been a long time that the European Commission had not provided such complex regulations, but we believe that they will probably help a lot the sellers, but we are just a little bit doubtful about the fact that this system will be perfectly operational from the 1st of July. And maybe one recommendation would be to wait probably a couple of months to see how the system will work, so that your VAT registration can be still used in the normal way, just in case. Thank you very much for your attention, and we will be happy to see you soon. Thank you, and have a very, very good day.
Have a lovely day. Bye-bye.